I don't know if it's because I grew up having an iPod and a PSP, a BlackBerry, or that like weird toy spy tech that they used to make, but I love like mini portable gear, and Music Tech makes some of the coolest mini portable gear. It's probably the closest I'll ever come to feeling like one of those cool hackers with a cyber deck. It's like bringing a cool piece of gear out traveling and making music on the go. People are always curious what these little devices are. So today I want to talk about some of my favorite travel music tech, and shout out to Analog Cases for sponsoring today's video. Let's dive right in. All right, let's start by talking about a piece of gear that I've talked a lot about on the channel before, but this is of course the Ableton Move. An important part of travel gear in my mind is the gear has to be able to serve multiple purposes. It can't just be a single purpose piece of gear. So aside from being a fantastic standalone unit, good sketch pad for making music, it also serves as a controller for Ableton Live. That can mean using it as a clip launcher or using it as instrument control, but it can be used just as a normal controller. Now, as a 4-track sketch pad and sampler, it's pretty fantastic too, but a key differentiator about the Ableton Move is that it has the easiest transition from getting your projects from this sketchpad to actually being able to finish them in Ableton Live. I think probably every artist struggles with finishing music at a certain point, so having a nice little device to make demos on is one thing, but now imagine that you can seamlessly upload the project to the cloud and actually being able to open the little demo that you made on Move like natively in Live with all the devices, all the effects, they're ready to go. It's kind of one of the best devices for that continuity from demo mode to full on use it in your software mode. Now, in contrast to that, here's a slightly more controversial device that I love, and I'm not here to open up the discourse about the price of the OP1 Field either. I think that conversation has been done to death on the internet, but I am here to tell you that I really enjoy using it, and I think that it makes a fantastic travel companion for music making. However, in contrast to the Ableton Move, I do not use this as a device that I'm going to be making tracks in the traditional way that'll end up getting finished. There's not that similar continuity to the DAW where I can drop projects in. You're basically making music on a tape on the OP1 Field, which is limiting, but also allows you to use the device in other creative ways. I like building samples up on the OP1 Field. The sheer amount of sounds and diversity of the synth engines within the OP1 Field is really strong, but I've essentially abandoned using it in the traditional song sequencing kind of workflow and basically just treat it like an instrument. A cool feature for travel is that it's got a built-in radio, so if you're in another country, sampling another country's talk radio stations or something can be a lot of fun. And to speak to that multi-functionality, you can actually use the OP1 Field as a Bluetooth MIDI controller. So of course, I can use it as its own device, do a lot of experimenting, a lot of sampling, but then I can use it with my DAW just for simple note input. Not a huge feature to write home about, but it does have that dual purpose capacity to it, which I think is essential for traveling with gear. Now, in a recent session with the next device I want to talk about, the Roland P6, I used the OP1 Field kind of as its own standalone instrument, which I think is where the strengths are, just to put a cap on that one. But moving on to the Roland P6, another recent favorite. I mean, look how tiny this is, and I have to say, out of the 3 musical devices that we're discussing right now, I think this one packs the biggest punch in terms of form factor, feature set, and price. The reason for that being is that it has a very strong and capable sequencer with full-on probability and advanced pattern features. In addition to being another creative sampler, I recently sampled a tongue drum with the granular engine of the P6, which is another huge pro. It has a granular engine, and it just sounds fantastic, and it was really fun to build a beat around that sound and essentially use the P6 as a tiny little drum machine plus sample instrument. Amazing built-in effects, and then you can basically send audio through it. So if I want to pair the P6 with any of these other instruments, whether it be Ableton Move or the OP1 Field, I can just send audio out into the P6 and also use the effects to affect whatever I'm running through the P6 and use them together. All three of these pieces of gear I think are suitable to use just purely on their own, with the OP1 Field being the quirkiest and most expensive, the Ableton Move being the most conventional, and the P6 being the most fun. But combining them together could be a lot of fun, which I have done in the past here on this channel. And even if you're carrying just two of these devices, they don't take up a ton of room in your bag, and you can keep them protected in these amazing cases from Analog Cases, the sponsor for today's video. As you've already seen, Analog Cases makes cases for all sorts of gear to keep your gear safe. Something cool about these cases is that you also get a pouch to keep some of the cables for your gear as well. But something that also might be appealing to you if you're thinking about traveling with gear is their Track Pack backpack. And recently I shot this video for Analog Cases where I tried to fit as much gear as possible in this backpack. And as you can see, it can fit a ton of gear, including my big, heavy 16-inch MacBook Pro. It's durable and it's got the pads in the back that keep it comfortable even if you are carrying a ton of gear. It makes a great carry-on bag that can fit a ton of stuff, and the amount of pockets is just super clutch. For when you're back at home with your gear, they also make the fantastic XTS stands, which they've got different sizes for different gear, and also they can expand to fit different types of gear. So from cases to bags to stands, I'm sure Analog Cases has something for you. I've got a link down in the description that'll save you 10% off your first order. Thank you so much to Analog Cases for sponsoring today's video. Okay, let's move on from the standalone music making devices for a bit and talk about some of the other tech and accessories that I like to use when traveling. Now, I do own an M1 MacBook Pro, but I also have an M1 MacBook Air because it is just so much lighter and easier to carry than my 16-inch chunky MacBook Pro. And I see a lot of conversation online about, is the M1 good enough? Is the M3, is the M4 good enough? Having big projects with lots of plugins in Ableton Live, with lots of tracks, editing multicam footage in Final Cut Pro on both the MacBook Pro and the MacBook Air, and I have zero issues. Does the MacBook Air hang once or twice here and there when editing a more complex video? Yes, but not in a way that I'm totally frustrated and feel like it's detrimental. It literally happens once in a while. And it's really interesting. I've seen crazy deals on M1 MacBook Airs out there, and to have this level of quality in such an accessible device, I don't know, I just remember the days of trying to go budget and getting the cheapest Windows laptop I could find for the best specs, and it's always a crapshoot with Windows devices in my opinion. But M1 MacBook, even the M1 MacBook Air, I'm telling you, is not a bad machine, especially if you're just starting or if you just want something lighter to carry on your travels. Staying in the Apple ecosystem for one more shout, I also very much use the iPad mini a lot. You can see I'm using it right now to monitor my video as we're shooting it, but it serves a lot of purposes. Obviously, there's a lot of fantastic mobile apps on the iPad mini for making music. So if you want to be super minimalist and cut the laptop out completely, you could do that. But also I use it a lot to edit some videos, edit photos. I keep all my social media apps off my phone and on the iPad only. And even though the MacBook Air is nice and light to carry, you can see that iPad mini is just like tiny in comparison. And I can sometimes use USB-C audio out from any of these devices into the iPad mini and use it as a recorder if I don't have my dedicated recorder on me. Speaking of which, this is the Sony PCM A10. It is my latest favorite field recorder. I love all kinds of field recorders, but this one, as you can see, is pretty tiny. I was looking for something that was super small. I realized I don't really need a bunch of inputs while I'm on the go. I'm really just looking for something that I can connect directly to a piece of gear to record a live session with, and also do some field recording and sampling. So having one of the tiniest versions of that in this little recorder is fantastic. Also, it has a rechargeable internal battery, which I prefer instead of, say, rechargeable AA's, which I keep in my other recorder, because that means you have to travel with an additional battery charger and additional batteries. This one I can just always charge via USB. I can't 100% recommend this recorder for one reason. It's this feature with the USB port, which is built in. That looks pretty cool, right? I agree, it is pretty cool. However, the mechanism on this door, this latch system, fails sometimes, and it's hard to get a dongle to connect without actually pushing the USB in. It just feels faulty in there. There's something wrong with that mechanism. So regardless, I've started recording to the micro SD card, so if for some reason I end up becoming unable to connect via USB. Other than that, form factor is perfect, audio quality is fantastic, and I don't have an analog case for it, but I do have a case that my mom crocheted for me to keep it safe in the bag, which also has a little pouch for a dongle as well. And I like to keep my little windscreen attached via the button here as well. Then we've got our nice little field recording setup ready to go. Next, there's two kinds of headphones that I travel with. Over-the-ear headphones like these, and earbuds or in-ear monitors, which we'll talk about in a moment. These are the new III TMA2 wireless headphones. They provide an ultra low latency wireless system using this little dongle here, this little box. So you can actually monitor in real time with low latency and make music in real time, no problem. Not the same thing as Bluetooth. And in this version, they've reduced some noise in the headphones, which was caused by the wireless transmission. They're much lighter, and they've significantly reduced the size of the receiver from the previous iteration. This little receiver can connect to any piece of gear via this little audio cable. So if I want to monitor one of these little standalone devices, just connect up the receiver and I can be totally wireless making music in real time. But also it can be a USB audio device. So you can connect this to a laptop, for instance, and then be monitoring in real time completely wirelessly. Back to the multi-purpose gear situation when you're traveling that I like to talk about. These also do have traditional Bluetooth. So if you want to just do some listening while you're on the go, they've got Bluetooth. And of course, you can connect them with a traditional wire as well. A lot of options there, but to have the convenience of going wireless in a nice little system like this is quite the luxury. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, I recently got these in-ear monitors by Heidi's. I'm not sure how you say the company's name, but in-ear monitors are a little different than traditional earbuds because they go in your ears and they provide a bit more isolation, which I do like. Now, a lot of in-ear monitors strive to have this super flat and balanced response I've seen, which is useful in a lot of situations. However, I found that these in-ear monitors are much more driven towards having a specific sound and having a pleasurable listening experience. They have got dual drivers, which means there's a driver specifically for the bass, which I'm so surprised how well you can feel the bass in these. And then a second driver for clarity, top end, that sort of thing. These aren't custom fit to my ears or anything, but they still fit comfortably. They sound fantastic. And sometimes it's just a matter of convenience, being able to carry much more compact in-ear monitors versus bigger over-the-ear headphones that don't always fit in whatever bag you're carrying. So just two options there based on how much you actually want to carry during the day. Now, speaking of these in-ear monitors, I have also got this, which is a digital audio player. It's made by the same company, and we're throwing it back to the days of the iPod. But essentially, I was just thinking, companies be crazy out here where you buy something online and you're technically not owning it. You're buying a lease for content, whether that's a streaming service for movies or music. So if I'm buying music online, say via Bandcamp, I want to have a device where it's not tied to any particular app and that nobody can take that music away from me. This is music that I own, stored on a little device that I can listen to it on. It's a dedicated device, so it's distraction free, and I can just build up my library of music that I own. Nobody can take it from me, and it just lives in this little digital audio player, which is honestly not that difficult to pack with it being so tiny. Pair it with the IEMs, and we have a nice little off-the-grid music listening experience. The music gets stored to an SD card, so it's super convenient. USB charging. I honestly think we're just going back to the days of having little dedicated purpose-built pieces of tech, or at least I'm enjoying consuming music in this way. Not that I don't still listen to music on like YouTube Music if I want to listen to new sort of like trending music, but the music that I own, the intentional listening to a whole album through, that's happening here on this little digital audio player. That doesn't need to reconnect to the internet at any point to verify my licenses or something like that. All right, quickly, some gear that's not necessarily dedicated to music making, but some honorable shout outs. First of all, these little cable winders from Muji, they just keep the cable situation a lot cleaner. You can wind up the cables, you don't have a mess of cables in your bag, and they've also got a little smartphone holder in there. I've also got this charging block, which, is very aesthetically pleasing, and it has a nice little LED LED grid on it, but I just wanted to point out, can we see the maybe the design influence? Aside from just aesthetics, you know, I don't think everybody's gonna go out and spend a ton of money on a charging block, but one convenient factor of this one here is that it is a fast charger and it's got 3 USB-C ports on it, as opposed to the ones that come with Apple devices that are this big chunky block with only a single port. So if I want to charge multiple of these devices at the same time, this one comes in handy. And finally, I guess this isn't music tech, but for me, music and visuals go hand in hand. This is the DJI Osmo Pocket, which I use to capture a lot of videos while I'm traveling. And it's not completely unrelated to music, right? I do performances, I like to capture visuals for my ambient music, and I don't like to always carry this big, chunky, heavy camera. It's literally called an Osmo Pocket because it fits in your pocket. It's sort of like a step up in quality above your phone. So if you've been thinking about making videos, but you don't want to take the plunge into a bigger, more complicated, more expensive camera, the Osmo Pocket is really a convenient way to go. It can shoot both horizontally and vertically, which is very convenient, and traveling with it is just super easy. Definitely recommend this for anybody who's just thinking about starting to make some videos around your music or just videos in general. But I think we've kind of covered it all, folks. I don't know if you've got your particular favorite piece of travel gear. Like I said at the beginning, any of these music making devices could be a fantastic travel companion. And honestly, even when I'm not traveling, I still love using these devices too. And I just think we're living in this renaissance of little portable technology. I think music technology in particular is some of the coolest tech currently, where every phone kind of now looks the same. It's just a glass block. I like this idea of little purpose-built tech, a dedicated camera, a dedicated audio recorder, audio player, music making device. You can be really intentional about the tech that you use instead of like, you know, your phone is super powerful. Even the iPad and MacBook, they're super powerful, but there's a bunch of other things that they can do. And the cliche thing of limits foster creativity, it really is true. So would love to hear your thoughts about any of the gear and any questions you might have. Feel free to leave a comment. If you need cases, stands, or a bag for any of your gear, check out the link to Analog Cases in the description. And thank you so much to Analog Cases for supporting my work and sponsoring today's video. Also, shout out to you out there, channel members. Thank you for your ongoing support, and I will see you all in the next one. This has been TAETRO. Have a good one.